hold up. Now, we have not completely lost our minds. This test is not a comparison test of the Scorpio with the Fortuner. The Fortuner is twice the price of the Scorpio. And the Endeavour, you can't even buy it anymore. Ford is not there in India right now. So what are we doing here? Well, the whole purpose is to find out just how close Mahindra have come to the benchmarks set by Toyota and Ford. Should you actually consider Scorpio in place of a Fortuner? That's what we're going to be talking about. And also, we're going to be talking about the place that we're shooting at. This is going to be hugely significant. A year and a half from now, you're going to be seeing sports cars, supercars, race cars, all at this very place. So where are we at? We're going to talk about that later on in this video. And before we go ahead, don't forget to smash that bell icon. Stay notified for our video drops. Stay subscribed to the Evo India channel, the home of enthusiast motoring in the country. And guys, come on. Give us a thumbs up if you like this video. Before we get going, I told you I'd talk to you about the place that we're shooting this video at. Behind me, what you see is going to be the main straight of a new racetrack in India. This site, this is the Nanoli Speedway, and this is your first actual look at the work that is going on here. So construction has begun in full swing. It's of course extremely wet because it is the monsoons right now, but the work is really tremendous. So that is the main straight. Across out there, that's the return of the straight. It goes off into the land that you see behind me. This place is going to be really green, really pretty. I'll get the camera to pan across to my right. So what you see in the distance, that's going to be the workshops and the garages. That's not the pits, but that's the workshops and the garages. You pan further to the left. That's the main straight that goes off into the distance and then loops back over here. You might be able to see the windmills on the mountains in the distance. That's all going to be here. It's going to be a really, really beautiful racetrack. Behind me, those are going to be the support buildings. So this is going to be a members only racetrack, and with your membership you get a lovely sort of cottage or villa, something like that over there. You get a cognac lounge, a cigar lounge. So this is going to be exclusive. It's also going to be extremely premium, and the racetrack, well, they promise that this is going to be a really, really cool racetrack. Well, fingers crossed. Next year, we'll have a new racetrack in the country. So behind me, these are going to be the clubhouses, the rooms for the guests. In the middle, there's going to be a cognac bar. So this is going to be a really high-end property, and work, as you see, is going on full swing despite the monsoons. Now, what's usually important in an SUV is size. It has to tower over everything. It has to look massive. It has to of face, and the new Scorpio, it has grown. Now visually you can see the differences. The Scorpio is actually the widest amongst the Fortuner and the Endeavour. In terms of overall length, the Fortuner is slightly more than the Scorpio, and the Endeavour is significantly more than the Scorpio. And as you can see, the Scorpio is the tallest in its class, so it is massive. And what does that translate to? It has to translate into space. Let's start with the Fortuner. The driver's seat, it is adjusted to my driving position, and let's jump into the back. So you climb into the Fortuner, and that's because the floor is actually pretty high, and that also means that the under thigh support isn't all that great. But in terms of space, well, I have 4 or 5 inches of free knee room, so that's enough and more. Headroom is just about adequate. You don't have a sunroof out here. This is wide. You have a center armrest. The transmission tunnel is not too big, so 3 abreast can be set. And overall, this actually has enough of space. You will be comfortable out.
What about the third row?
I don't want to climb into the third row, man.
Anyway, journalists, we have to do everything about the car. Third row is also important.
Oh man, okay. So third row. Oh God. So one touch, tumble and fold. Then you climb. Okay, not so easy to get into the third row, but nothing is easy.
Put this down.
And
there you go.
Okay, wait. So the third row is not for adults. It is pretty cramped in here. I think you can adjust the, yeah, you can adjust the recline angle, but this is cramped. And now let's check out the backseat space on the Scorpio. The Scorpio, you actually walk into it. You just have to slightly step into it, but the floor is a little lower, so access into the third row is slightly better than the Fortuner. And we're looking at the Fortuner as the benchmark right now. In terms of knee room, you have 2 inches of free knee room, so the Fortuner has more free knee room. The width, obviously this is slightly wider, so in terms of width, both are on par. The transmission tunnel is slightly smaller on the Scorpio, so 3 abreast. Well, you can fit 3 abreast. You get a center armrest. The seat back angle, it does recline, so you can adjust that. In terms of headroom, slightly more headroom than the Fortuner because this is taller than the Fortuner. And before Atish comes, I'll show you the third row. But before that, we have to do a switcheroo because only this seat actually folds and tumbles out of the way. Ugh. So that's there, and go climb. Getting into the third row is actually easier in the Scorpio. And now in terms of space, well, it's as bad as the Fortuner. Like the Fortuner, the Scorpio's third row is not for full-sized adults. This is cramped. In fact, I think the Fortuner has slightly more third row space than the Scorpio. Slightly more, but it has the edge. Oof, oh my God. And now for the Endeavour. It's got the longest wheelbase. It is the longest. And in terms of space, well, that translates into a lot of space out here. So as you can see, the amount of free knee room is the most amongst this lot. It's almost 7-8 inches. The seats actually feel the most premium and high quality. These are leather seats. The Scorpio has leatherette. Of course, the Fortuner also has leather. The aircon vents in the roof actually work better at cooling you, and you have a climate control along with blower settings. You have a panoramic sunroof. None of the others have it. The Fortuner has no sunroof. The Scorpio has a regular size sunroof. And let's check out the space at the back. Actually, the quality over here does feel a step up on the others. So this doesn't tumble, but it slides out of the way and getting into the back. Okay, this is a bit more acrobatics are required. And how the hell? Oh man. Okay. I don't know how that's possible, but this is the longest, but the third row is the worst in this lot. It's like a torture chamber. I want to start the driving with the Endeavour and start by mourning that, what, how could you leave the country? What happened? You drive the Endeavour and it is really nice. This is actually a very good SUV to drive even today. The visibility is really good. The driving position is great. The ride comfort is good. These are broken roads, but it rides really well over it. The quality of the materials, the design, the fit and finish is good. This is the 3.2 liter 5-cylinder diesel engine, 197 bhp, 470 Newton meters of torque. So effortless performance. Later on towards the end, they had the 2-liter diesel engine with the 9-speed automatic gearbox, 9 speeds, which I thought was, a couple of speeds too many. And that is not as powerful as this, though the gearbox does shift much quicker on that engine and that powertrain. But this is brilliant over these broken roads. You can feel a bit of that pitter-patter, typical of ladder frame chassis. But overall, this moves so nicely. The seats are nice and wide. These are leather seats. This all beige interior trim. Okay, doesn't look sporty, doesn't feel sporty, but it does make the cabin seem very airy. It's got a huge panoramic sunroof. The steering, okay, not much in the way of feel, and the handling, this does feel like an old school lumbering SUV. Not a handful. It's not difficult to drive, not by a long shot. But it is also, as you pick up speed, it does get a bit bouncy and it does feel little old school in the way it moves. What the Endeavour also feels is unstoppable. So you keep chugging along, you keep motoring along, it just keeps at it. And also this design, well, it has aged very well. So everybody's put this big Ford on the grille as if anybody will mistake the Endeavour for anything other than a Ford. But when you see one in your rear view mirrors, you move out of the way. This does has an imposing presence. Now the powertrain, while it is torquey and it is powerful, it is also noisy. So when you step on it, you can definitely hear the powertrain. And also when you step on it over these lumpy, unpaved roads, you do have that gentle loping trait characteristic of all old school ladder frame SUVs. But my overall impression is definitely that this is nice. This really is nice. In terms of the equipment, you have the analog speedo flanked by 2 digital clusters. Not a very big digital infotainment, but okay, good enough for the job. Big 18-inch wheels, lots of suspension travel. The Endeavour also gets proper 4-wheel drive, so it's got this knob here with the different drive modes. So you have what looks like sand and ruts and whatever, snow. So all of that is there. You have 4 low, you can lock the diff. So it has a lot of equipment, and we have driven it off-road, and we have seen that this can perform really well off-road. Also because of the platform, old school ladder frame, which is pickup derived. So in terms of the ability to take a beating, these things, they just go on and on. Now obviously Ford is not there in India, and that should be the cue for all Ford owners to be howling about their service quality, except everybody is super happy. In fact, the owner of this SUV tells me that the service quality has actually become even better after Ford has left. There is more competition amongst dealers. The customer centricity has improved. So every time he gives the Endeavour for service, the call center calls him, asks him about the service quality, if they have any complaints. Less than 10,000 bucks to service the Endeavour. So the costs are low, the quality is great. The service centers are at the same place. It's not like they've moved to the back of beyond. So Ford have done an amazing job in taking care of the existing car park. You got to doff your hat to them. Doff your hat to them. And also scream as to, how could you leave? What the hell? When you make such vehicles and then have to pack up and leave, is just absurd. Anyway, it is what it is. But if you find a second-hand Ford Endeavour, go for it. These things are really good. Right then, next up, the Fortuner. This, well, what do I have to tell you about the Fortuner? Everybody knows everything that has to be said about the Fortuner. It is the default in this segment. Everybody wants a Fortuner in white, even better, with an India flag on it, even better. And it's not without good reason, because a Fortuner lasts through anything and everything. The quality, the reliability, the longevity, it's unbelievable. Whatever sounds a new Fortuner makes, it makes it for the rest of its life. It's not like a new Fortuner will make no noise and then afterwards it'll start making noise. What you get right out of the showroom is what you'll get for the rest of its life, because nothing goes wrong with a Fortuner. It's just unbelievable how good the quality of these things are. And that's why Toyota can charge whatever they want for the Fortuner and it will continue to sell. It's just the default thing. It's like, no, everybody wants a Fortuner. That's it. So when Mahindra actually went out and started designing the Scorpio, the Fortuner would have been their benchmark. Just go out and try and improve on the Fortuner. Have they done that? Well, we'll talk about that when I drive the Scorpio. But when I compare it with the Endeavour, the first thing that you notice is the steering is heavier than the Endeavour, which means that you take a little bit more effort, put in a little bit more effort into driving the Fortuner. The ride quality, it's more bouncy and unsettled at low speed. There is more of that shimmer and jiggle over these small undulations, that side to side jiggle that you get, which is again typical, at least whatever we thought, that typical of ladder frame chassis. It's very obvious out here in the Fortuner. The Fortuner is also based on the Hilux pickup truck platform, and that means the floor is higher, so even in the front you do sit with your knees up high, and there's a lot of jiggling around. The steering is not one finger light, but the engine, it has heart. There's a lot of torque in here. It feels very effortless. It's also noisy. You can hear the engine. It's pretty audible. It's not deafening, but it is audible. And it sounds typically of a Toyota engine. Even Innova guys will be familiar with this engine note. There's enough power. There's enough torque. There's a lot of grunt. It is a big engine. It's a 2.7 liter engine. So it keeps chugging along, and no matter what the road conditions are. But you know, the thing is that with the steering feeling heavy, it does give you more of a sense of solidity. It feels unbreakable. It feels indestructible. And I guess that's why people buy Fortuners. That's why people buy Legendary Edition Fortuners, GR Sport Fortuners. I was checking, that almost goes up to some 60 lakh rupees on road for a Fortuner. 60 lakh rupees on road, and yet there's a waiting period for the Fortuner. God, this really is a great time to be in the car business. 60 lakh rupees for a Fortuner. And the best part is that you will get damn good resale also. It's not like you drive a Fortuner and then the depreciation hits you hard in the face. You can use it for 2.5 lakh kilometers and then still get damn good resale out of it. This is a no-brainer. I would have definitely liked better ride comfort, more planted road manners, less of this bouncing around, more features. There is no sunroof. This infotainment, well, this is purely aftermarket. This is not how the Fortuner comes. But because it's not properly loaded, people put this aftermarket systems, Tesla kind of systems in their Fortuners. And see, over this bad patch of road, we just drove the Endeavour out here, and it was planted. It was not bouncing around. Whereas, just look at the difference. I'm doing the same speed. In fact, I'm slightly slower in the Fortuner. And man, it bounces around significantly more. Significantly more. And that's why when we did a comparison test with the Fortuner and the Endeavour, when the Endeavour was new, we gave the Endeavour the crown. We said that is the better SUV, the better body on frame SUV. And I'll say that again. The Endeavour would be my pick when faced with the choice of Fortuner versus Endeavour. And we now know that Endeavours have good quality, build quality is good, service is damn good. Of course, Toyota service, come on, everybody knows it's epic. But with the Endeavour also, no problems. Hey, the Fortuner has something that the others don't. It's got steering wheel mounted paddle shifters for the gearbox. Cool. It also has 4-wheel drive, wood on the steering wheel, a nod to luxury, all black interiors with this brown leather trim on the seats. Give it a slightly more premium vibe. In a Fortuner, especially a white Fortuner, people think twice before messing around with you on the road. People think twice before pushing you off or squeezing you around. This thing commands respect like you would not believe. So even though the Fortuner has a little bit more power, a little bit more torque compared to the Scorpio, it feels more eager, more energetic. more responsive. And let's talk a little bit more about that when we jump into the Scorpio. And last, but most importantly, the new Mahindra Scorpio N. What we have here is the 2.2 liter M-Hawk diesel, makes 172 bhp, 400 Newton meters of torque. So it's actually slightly down on power compared to the other two. It's got the smallest engine also compared to the other two, but it feels the lightest. I think it is the lightest, and it feels the most energetic of the lot. It's mated to the 6-speed automatic transmission. You can also get a manual gearbox. The automatic transmission costs 1.85 lakh rupees more than the manual. This one also has the 4-wheel drive. 4-wheel drive is 2.45 lakh more than the 2-wheel drive, which is obviously rear-wheel drive. This is a proper body-on-frame construction. It's not a monocoque. It's not front-wheel drive. It is a proper thoroughbred SUV. But the improvements into this SUV are just remarkable. The ride comfort, that's the thing that really strikes you. But before that, what really hits you first is the steering. It's just so light. This is now electric power steering, not hydraulic. Obviously, everybody will go boo-hoo in terms of feedback and all of that. But it's an SUV. What feedback do you get from the steering of SUVs? The Scorpio, the steering is just so light. You can use one finger and you can twirl it. It's not recommended, but you can do that. It is that light, and that just makes it so much easier to drive. So the Fortuner, it feels heavy. 3-pointed turns are a bit cumbersome in it, whereas here with the Scorpio, with one finger you can twirl the steering wheel. It's just so light. Personally, I would have actually preferred a little bit more weight to the steering, which will make the Scorpio feel a little bit more planted. But we did the day with the Scorpio series, where we got an entrepreneur, a doctor, a lawyer, all of those guys to drive the Scorpio. And all of them commented on how this light steering made it so easy to drive in the city. So maneuverable, hassle-free, stress-free. So I guess for the majority of the customers, this light steering actually will help. With the diesel, you also get that zip-zap zoom modes, and in zoom, the steering weighs up a little bit, and that is a good thing. In fact, if you ask me, that should be the default setting. But anyway, people tend to like this light steering. Makes it easy to drive. What's even more impressive is the ride comfort. Now, these are the same roads that we drove the Endeavour and the Fortuner on. And the Scorpio is so much more planted. Speed breaker, it goes over it so much easier. It's stunning just how much better the Scorpio is. It's stunning how much more comfortable the Scorpio is. The Scorpio, it used to be a really bouncy little thing, especially on the rear. It used to kick back so hard, whereas now it's amazing. And the amazing part is the comparison, because we've already driven the Endeavour and the Fortuner. Now you're driving the Scorpio, and you can see just how it has moved the game on. Now, I have to clarify why we've got the Fortuner and Endeavour and comparing it with the Scorpio. As you said at the start, the Fortuner is twice the price of the Scorpio. So what sense does it make? But fact also is that what else do you compare the Scorpio with? There is no other proper body on frame, proper 4x4 SUV in this segment right now. You can't compare it to the Safari. The Safari is a proper monocoque and front-wheel drive. In fact, the Safari, it goes up against the XUV 700, and the rest of the lot, the Creta, the Seltos, everything else, all goes up against the XUV 700. The XUV 700 is a completely different beast to the Scorpio. That is a monocoque with front-wheel drive with the option of all-wheel drive. This is a body-on-frame with proper 4x4, not all-wheel drive, but proper 4x4 and natively rear-wheel drive. So completely different architecture, completely different position. Though the audience might be the same, but in terms of the setup, in terms of the characteristic, it's really different. And also in terms of the way it drives, the Scorpio is very different from the XUV. Do you want a comparison test of the XUV with the Scorpio? Let us know in the comments, and if enough of you tell us that we should do it, we definitely will go ahead and do that. But for now, what else compares with the Scorpio apart from the Fortuner and the Endeavour? I don't know. Have we missed out on anything? Let us again know in the comments. Because the Hector, the Safari, Creta, Seltos, what else is there in the segment? Everything else will go up against the XUV 700. So this is the only logical test that we could think of. And we had to think of something because you have to pitch the Scorpio against something and get some sort of perspective on it. In isolation, everything seems good and great. It's only when you push it against the benchmarks, established benchmarks, that's when flaws, issues, and niggles come about. And honestly, with the Scorpio, nothing is coming about. It's exceeding everything else that SUVs at twice the price are offering. Mahindra's engineers, they've been doing a remarkable job in terms of their R&D, in terms of their engineering, in terms of the suspension setup and tuning. Remarkable. The brakes, they're a little too sharp, the initial bite, but it brakes really well. It's got disc brakes at the rear. Fortuner does not have disc brakes at the rear. It doesn't have ADAS and all of that. Neither do the other two SUVs. And honestly, ADAS in India doesn't work. But over this typical rural road, Scorpio feels so planted, so quick as well. It just feels eager and light on its feet. It's not something that you could have said of SUVs in the past. And I mean proper body on frame SUVs, not the monocoque SUVs. But this is nearly like a car. Of course, compared to a monocoque SUV, there is that bit of pitter-patter, that typical body on frame characteristic. It has been toned down to a large extent, but it's still there. It's not been eliminated completely. So the first time you hit a bad patch, you do feel it. But now I'm going over this same bad patch as I went over with the Fortuner, and I'm going faster and I'm getting thrown around less. And this is a back-to-back comparison. No better proof of the pudding than in the tasting. And we are sampling it. We are sampling the bad roads. Same time, same speeds. Commendable, really commendable. I must also talk about the other things on the Scorpio. So in terms of features, the one thing that the Scorpio lacks over the Endeavour is the panoramic sunroof. Otherwise, it has far more kit inside here. Now, in terms of equipment, apart from the panoramic sunroof that the Endeavour has, and of course proper leather seats, these are leatherette seats on the Scorpio. Otherwise, this Mahindra has everything. A better infotainment system, a better sound system. This Sony sound system is remarkably good. All this connected jazz on it. You can start the car remotely, cool the car remotely, valet mode, all of that, inbuilt apps. You name it and it has it. In terms of the safety, well, the Scorpio still has to be tested by global NCAP, but if you go by the figures with the XUV 700, with the Thar, I would expect the Scorpio to perform really well. But I also have to be honest with you guys, and I have to point out that the Fortuner and also the Endeavour, they feel more robust. Of course, the Scorpio takes these bad roads really well, but the Fortuner, it somehow sits better. You get thrown around a bit more, but it feels stronger. I don't know why that is, but it just feels stronger. It feels more indestructible than the Scorpio. And of course, the Fortuner is tried, tested and proven. The Scorpio, it's new. We don't know what the long-term longevity and all of that is going to be. Though if you go by experience with the earlier Scorpio also, nobody really complains about it. Nobody complains about the cost of servicing. Nobody complains about the service quality either. But it is an unknown. With the Fortuner, you know, nothing will ever go wrong. In terms of the handling, the Scorpio is easy to drive and it generates more grip around corners. It also has ESP, another plus point. The driving position, it's higher up than the Fortuner, almost the same as the Endeavour, but you sit much higher up than in the Fortuner, so you get a better view ahead. The seats are more comfortable than in the Fortuner, more supportive. The Fortuner, you don't have this under thigh support, whereas you get that in the Scorpio. And the Fortuner, it has to be the benchmark because it is the benchmark. Everybody's buying the Fortuner. So if you can come anywhere close to matching the dynamics, the refinement, the space, the power of the Fortuner, and price it at what, half of the Fortuner, well, it's game over. if you're looking for me to tell you that the Scorpio is better than the Fortuner, well, that was never the intent of this test to begin with. If you can afford a Fortuner, definitely go for the Fortuner. As we've established in this test, the Fortuner retains both its desirability as well as sheer ability to monster over everything and be terrifically reliable for years and years and lakhs of kilometers. But the thing I need to point out is that the Scorpio, for the price, offers terrific value. In terms of ride, it is better than the two. In terms of handling, it's better than the two. Its engine is slightly smaller, but it delivers as good performance. It is easier to drive. The amount of equipment inside, well, it outshines both of the other two. So definitely, in terms of value for money, in terms of the kit that it offers, and also in terms of the dynamic competence, the Scorpio, it sets a new benchmark for body-on-frame SUVs at this price range. If this test has convinced you now about the Scorpio, well, I hate to break it to you, but demand has been through the roof. And if you book a Scorpio right now, you'll probably get it after 2, 3, 4 years. Such has been the crazy demand. People have caught on to the fact that the Scorpio, it represents terrific value for money, and Mahindra's engineering team, they've really moved the game on. If you've enjoyed this video, give us a thumbs up, smash that bell icon to stay subscribed to the Evo India channel, and of course share this video with like-minded enthusiasts.
Give me a break.
Does this recline? Oh God. No, it doesn't decline also. Okay, get me out of here.
You'll have to get slim.
Get slim, Salah.